Hello YouTube, this is a review of the movie Strange Thing About the Johnsons. The only reason I'm doing this is because I listened to several reviews and they really weren't reviews, they were just people shocked. One girl was given a warning that there's rape. One guy turned the movie into a black thing, and several other reviews were just people with their mouths dropped. But I was really looking forward to some content in the discussion after the film, but I didn't get that. So hopefully this will kind of get the ball rolling. This review is for people who've already seen the film. So if you've seen the movie, this is going to be an analyzation of the entire film. And I'm going to compare it with some other films that are similar to it with the theme and content. And hopefully that'll help people digest it who are completely shocked by this film. Someone mentioned in one review I read that there are books out there that are worse than this film, and I would agree 100%. Just to kind of give a little bit of background about myself, in elementary school I kind of got tricked into loving to read, where if you read so many books you get a star or a little pin you can kind of put on your shirt, you know, like the safety pin behind it, clip on your shirt. And so you read so many books, you get a star, you get a pizza. So that's where I began to love to read, and I love to read now. One of my favorite books in middle school was Crime and Punishment by the Russian author Takashi. I read it twice when I was in middle school. The first time I read it, got to the part where the young man kills the pawn shop owner, which is an old lady, and I was so shocked that I just stopped. I'm like, wow, I've never read anything like that. But I ended up finishing it. Very good book. Very good with, I guess, because it kind of crosses class lines, and there's the crime element to it as well. So you get a mixture of different people and backgrounds in one book. Years later, when I started working as a security guard at some plant, there was a bookshelf for the employees that worked there where they would drop off a book, pick up a book, and it swapped around like that so that more people could read. Each one teach one kind of thing, if you will. And I happened to see the title Crime and Punishment, thinking that was my favorite book again. Picked it up, and it ended up being an analyzation of banned books in America. And I have to bring this up because in that banned book list I found some books that, you know, were banned because of sexually explicit material. I think Catcher in the Rye was in there because it uses the GD word so often. I believe that got banned in the 70s. And then you continue to go forward in time up to the present, you're still finding books being banned in school because of the content. I think it's unfortunate because when you don't get a chance to discuss books with sexually explicit content or crime, then those who do read it, such as people like myself, are forced to adapt and kind of conquer the material on their own. You got to kind of read more stuff and kind of, alright, I got a reference here, a reference there, and now it's starting to make more sense. When you take that element of some authority figure out of the picture, those who do want to read and educate themselves will have to learn these things on their own by reading more content on the subject. That's why I wanted to do this video, to kind of help people who are completely shocked by this digest it a little further. Now, going back to that security guard job, when I was working there, I picked up a book because it's called Crime and Punishment. It ended up being a book on books that are banned. And among the books that were banned was one called, or author, called Marquis de Sade. This guy was born, I guess, 1740-ish, and he lived through the French Revolution. For those of you who don't know, the French Revolution goes something like this. before the French Revolution. I think it was 1789 or so, 1799, about 1800. You have basically absolute monarchy, where there are rich people in control who stayed in control for a really long time, and it's kind of like rich people with nothing to do. So basically the French Revolution came and people overthrew them in place of democracy, equality, citizenships, inalienable rights, some of the things that are in our U.S. Constitution. Well, Marquis de Sade lived in this aristocratic kind of culture, and he wrote about it in his books, about how older, wealthy people would seduce people from every class in order to sleep with them and molest young people, and it goes into everything. When you think of Marquis de Sade, think of sadomasochism or sadism, where you get pleasure from giving other people pain. So part of the thrill of these aristocrats was to see who could score the most points. It was like a game. I bet you I can get that poor girl over there. I bet you I can get that poor boy over there. I bet you I can get this rich woman over there. I bet you I can get that rich person over there and sleep with them. So that was their whole intent at this time. So this was part of the absolute monarchy world that got overthrown during the French Revolution. And Marquis de Sade illustrates it very detailedly in his books. One of the first books I read in his, there's an anthology I found on his. The very first one I read was called Philosophy in the Bedroom. And this does tie into something strange about the Johnsons. To kind of, if we want to give the dad his part in this whole movie. In Philosophy in the Bedroom, you have a rich, wealthy guy who decides to invite over a rich, wealthy girl, young girl, maybe in her teens, kind of like the boy in the beginning of this film. Basically, the mother kind of was against it, because they use the word libertine a lot in French Revolution and Marquis de Sade literature. She didn't want her daughter exposed to the elements that were in this guy's home, this aristocrat's home. Basically, these aristocrats were there just to sleep with people and seduce them. So, to make a long story short, the aristocrat seduces the girl, and the way he does it is, as he makes her feel good from, the way he does to molest her, he then tells her, while at the peak, your mom's going to come in here and try and ruin things for us. Do you want to not feel this good ever again? She's like, no, because, she's being molested and seduced. And, he's like, alright, well, if you ever want this to stop, then let your mom come in and tell you it's wrong. And so by the end of the book, she's mad at her mom, because her mom discovers the guy slept with her, and she's completely seduced at this point. She loves the thrill of having intercourse and sleeping with this guy, to the point that she hates her mom. That's where the son in the Johnsons comes in. He kind of fits that same profile. Other books by Marquis de Sade going along the same line of thought of, there's a really nice person, and people who are sadists are mad at this person because that nice person won't give themselves to them physically. So when you think about something about the Johnsons, you have the son who is completely angry at his mother for being in the way of him and his dad's relationship. If you look at other films that go in the same direction, you have La Mala Educación, or called Bad Education. This is a movie out of Spain. The director is Pedro Almodovar. He recently did a movie that I saw called The Skin I Live In with Antonio Banderas. Not to be confused with The Skin I'm In, which is a book written by Sharon Flake. It's about a black schoolgirl who is, ridiculed for being dark-skinned. So, The Skin I Live In, The Skin I'm In, two completely different things, but back to the point, you have the same content in Maleducation, where you have the father or the priest, the Catholic priest, who molests a young boy. And what I really like about Pedro Almodovar's movies is he mashes movies together. So if you see this film, it's basically a film noir where you have a guy from the middle class who tries to run after a myth. He thinks that this boy who was seduced was really seduced, but he ends up being tricked. You have to see the movie to kind of follow that thought process, but to bring the point back home, in Bad Education, you have a young kid who's tricked into being confused, and then he gets corrupted by it. He's basically seduced by this, and you find that the jobs, and something that's strange about the Johnsons and Bad Education, the jobs that people have are what bring the whole structure together. And something real about the Johnsons, you have the dad who's an author or a playwright. He uses his job to kind of bring his sorrow to light for the world to see. Bad Education, you have a film director who brings a movie to light to show how bad his world is for the world to see. With another movie, you have Takashi Miike. He is a Japanese director. He did a movie called Visitor Q, where you have a family structure that's very middle class, like something about the Johnsons. Think of Japanese culture as very quiet. In this one, you see a complete reverse from something bad about the Johnsons. In the Johnsons, it starts off nice, and then it slowly erodes into something ugly. With Takashi Miike's Visitor Q, it starts off ugly, and then it evolves into something nice. Both movies, all three movies, the jobs are what kind of bring the story to light. Same thing with Visitor Q, Takashi Miike's movie, a Japanese film. The dad uses his job as a journalist to, first he's talking about how bad children are in the world, and then he gets beat up by some kids he's interviewing, so he's so ashamed that he quits his job, and he decides to pretend like he's still doing the story by showing it to his family. So you have this middle class man who's trying to get into his own children's lives, and at one point he has incest with his daughter, which is something that's very common in American culture and the news in our culture. We see a lot of men molesting females, but not men molesting their sons. And so in this movie, the middle class structure is so confined, where you don't want to look bad in front of your neighbor. The same kind of approach I would apply to the Johnsons, where he has to keep it under wraps so that it doesn't look bad to his neighbors. Very similar to Bad Education. The middle class guy who runs after his supposed lover is trying to keep it under wraps from his wife. The wives play central roles in all three of these films. In Bad Education, the wife kind of just is left in the dark. She doesn't know, and this guy will do anything to keep her from knowing that he's after another man. And something about the Johnsons, the dad, he really knows he messed up, as you see his expression at the wedding. And he tries to bring it back to his wife by showing his son that he wants to be with his wife. If you see the part where she kind of ignores him when he's being raped, the father's being raped, the same thing happens in the Takashi Miike's Visitor Q, where the son is mad at the mother, again, just like the Johnsons, where he takes his aggression out on his mom by beating her up. And the dad is sitting there at the table eating, just this regular meal, and while his wife's getting beat up in the background, he completely ignores it. And his wife comes back battered and beaten and gives him seconds, like, here's some more food, honey. They all kind of ignore each other, and I challenge you to see these films and try to analyze them, approach them, and put them together. Now, I'm approaching 15 minutes, so I don't want to go over the YouTube time, but that's as much as I want to say about these movies. There's a lot of content out there in books and in other things, and to quickly dismiss it because of, religious beliefs, I think that's a cop-out. If you're dismissing it because it's just too violent, I know it's not for everybody, but some of my favorite films reference books. I think the movie Hostel by Eli Roth did a really good job of portraying the sadistic mentality that's out there. Very much like Marquis de Sade books. But with 15 seconds left, I'm not going to waste you guys' time anymore. But, I hope this gets ball rolling with some discussion to mix movies and books and bring it all together. Take care, everybody. Take care.